Director John Landis today on Pop Goes the Culture. Hi, I'm David Levin. Welcome to another critically massive episode of Pop Goes the Culture. Today, part 3 of my conversation with director John Landis, with more Michael Jackson stories, Fred Astaire, Thriller, the Blues Brothers, Dan Ackroyd, Paul Schaeffer, the Three Amigos, everything you ever wanted to see. And again, a reminder, this was shot a while ago while Michael Jackson was still alive.
I quite like Michael. I don't really have anything to say about his private life because I'm not privy to it and I don't know, and I only know my own experience, which is all positive. I'm not crazy about his family, but I like Michael very much. And he's a tragic figure, but such a talent, man. Whoa, I worked with Mike twice. I also did Black or White later.
Again with the transformation.
But that was morphing. That was what I wanted to do on Werewolf. Computers couldn't do it then. So
how did that sort of happen? Because that's...
I said to him that, when you make up a video, you come up with shit, and I said, can we do all the races morphing different types? In fact, you know whose first job that was? Who's one of those faces who sticks her tongue out? She's now a celebrity. Is Tyra Banks. I think she was 15. She's one of those faces. But anyway, so I was telling you, a great Michael Jackson story. Two great Michael. Well, first of all, you got to realize that Michael was performing in shows where he would sit in the wings as a child and watch Otis Redding, Jackie Wilson, James Brown, Sam Cooke. I mean, this is a kid who studied, and really had like almost a vaudevillian kind of background, and he's genuinely a wonderful dancer. It breaks my heart that people that haven't seen him dance. I mean, when he first did the moonwalk and first did those moves, it was so startling and exciting and everything. And now basically that's what he does. When I did Black or White 8 years later, I said, Mike, I really want you to do other dancing, which is why there's bits of ethnic dancing. He does Indian dancing and Native American dancing, and he does Russian, the Kazatsky and stuff. But it breaks my heart. There was this big tap dance number that he cut out. I mean, he's really good. Anyway, but I was telling you something. Oh, just the image that I love with Michael is when the Jackson 5 first moved to California from Detroit. They moved into Bel Air somewhere, and their next door neighbor, 2 houses down, was Fred Astaire. And for years, literally 7 or 8, maybe even 10 years, on Sunday mornings, Michael would go over, little Michael, would go over to Fred's house, and Fred and Michael had this ritual, which was Fred had a small rehearsal hall and a very small dance studio with a wooden floor and a ballet bar and a mirror in his house. It wasn't very big, but it was there. And they had a TV, up and they would, every Sunday, the two of them alone would just watch and dance their ass off to Soul Train.
Wow.
Wouldn't you have liked to have seen that?
Oh, my God. Oh, my God. Can't imagine.
Yeah, I'd like to have seen that.
Well, that's an education.
Anyway, so working with, again, with Thriller, that just came out of nowhere. That was Michael calling me because he wanted to turn into a monster. That was his directive. And no,
but they made that thing ran every hour on the hour.
Well, Thriller's an interesting thing. I mean, if you want to hear the story, because it was a complete accident. They taught a course at the Harvard Business School on Thriller, and it was total bullshit. Because here's the origin and the result of Thriller. Michael had an album on CBS Records, Thriller. It was the most successful album of all time. Had outsold Sinatra, Elvis, the Beatles. The number 1 album of all time for over a year, and now is coming down. It was still in the top 10, but it was receding. He had done 2 videos, Beat It and Billie Jean, with Bob Giraldi, and I think Julian Temple. I don't know who did. But in any case, he had done. No, Beat It was Bob Giraldi. I think I forgot who did Billie Jean. I think Julian Temple. In any case, they were very successful, and he was a huge star, and everything's fine. Now I get this call. Would I do Thriller for Michael Jackson? So I go to meet Michael, and we talk, and I thought, I don't want to do a video. I mean, videos are essentially commercials to sell records, or now CDs. And I thought, well, and then I thought, Mike, you're the biggest star in the world. I can exploit your celebrity to bring back something I sorely miss, which is a theatrical short. You know, two-reelers, like a Bugs Bunny cartoon or a Three Stooges short, or, you know. So that's why Thriller's 14, it's 15 minutes, it's a two-reeler. And my deal was for theatrical distribution, and this is what we do. We'd make it like a movie, a short little movie. He went, great. So we put the thing together and figure out it's going to cost close to $500,000, which was extraordinarily expensive then, because it was union, and I wanted the dancers to rehearse at least 10 days, and there were expenses that were never done for a video, and huge makeup calls and stuff. And I said, okay, this is going to cost this much, and how we get the money? Michael said, well, we'll call Walter Yetnikoff at CBS. So I've never met Walter Yetnikoff, but Michael talks to him, and then he says, John, Walter Yetnikoff. Hello? And this guy screamed at me. The phone melted. The language was so vile, and the spit was coming out of the receiver. And it was like, I actually just said, okay, Mr. Yetnikoff, I'm hanging up on you, and I hung up. Mike, he's not giving us any money. So Michael said, well, I'll pay for it. I said, Michael, you can't put your own money in this. That's wrong. And no, I'll pay. No, Michael, you can't. He was still living in his parents' house in Encino, behind Gelson's at that time. So the end result was that George Folsey, who was my partner and film editor, George Folsey Jr., who produced Trading Places and many movies with me, great film editor. He cut Animal House and the Blues Brothers. George said, why don't we film us filming it? And that way, we'll have 45 minutes of a making of, and then we'll have Thriller. We put that together, that's an hour. And we can sell that hour to somebody. And I thought that's a great idea. We used to call it the making of filler, because it was like, how do we get 45 minutes out of here, you know? So what we did is we sold the hour to Showtime for a certain amount so they could be the first people to show it. We got like 2/3 of our money like that. Immediately MTV calls, hysterical. How can it be on high, you know? And so we said, well, you want exclusive free cable for 48 hours or so? Anyway, they paid big money and put up money. So now we had the money to make it. So we made it, and it went out, and it was this enormous success. And several things happened. One, the album went back to #1 and doubled its sales. So it proved the validity of, it made MTV, basically. Two, this guy named Austin First from Texas, I have no idea what happened to him. He had a company called Vestron Video. At that time, home video cost $80 to $120 to buy a video of a movie.
You got attention that no music video director really got.
Well, no, but that was because it was a theatrical short and had credits. You know, that's why. And the making of, I think. But anyway, so this guy calls Austin First. Now, meanwhile, Thriller is on, you know, they gave it away to everyone for free after that, and it was played every 20 minutes ad nauseum. And it's sad because it's really meant to be seen in a theater with good sound, and seeing it big, it's really intense. I don't know, it's like the #1 or 2 downloaded thing on iPod now, and I keep thinking, but it's this big, you know, I don't get it. Anyway, you know, I don't get it. Anyway, so this guy Austin First calls me, and he says, I'd like to do a home video of Thriller and the making of Thriller as an hour video. And I said, but it's on TV every 12 minutes for free. No one will buy it, especially at $90. He said, no, I'm going to sell this VHS for, and I never heard the expression before. This is 1983. He said, I'll call it, it's for sell-through. Now, what's that mean? He says, it'll be $24.95. It was the very first low-cost. Now you can buy, you know, DVDs for $10, but low-cost video, which meant people could buy it. And I said, okay, so we made that deal, and he sold 1 million in the United States, 4 million around the world. Unbelievable success, and all based on Michael, you know, and Michael's fame and talent.
But a very smart marketing.
It was not a very smart marketing move. That's the point. It was all an accident. It was all because, you know what a vanity billboard is on Sunset? This was a vanity video. The album was over. So everything that happened because of Thriller was no one's smart plan. And I've heard a lot of people take credit for a lot of that stuff, and the reality is it was all because Michael wanted to turn into a monster, and it was just this extraordinary events.
And later they had to put that disclaimer on.
Michael was still living at home. Mike's dad, his family, Jehovah's Witnesses. Mike's grandfather was an elder or deacon or whatever the hell it's called, archbishop, I don't know, the Jehovah's Witness. He was a very dapper guy. I think he's Catherine's dad. He used to wear a boater and a bow tie, little man. And the church was pretty upset about Thriller, and for a minute there, they almost killed it, but I was able to circumvent that by writing this little thing that Michael signed, and it was stupid.
But it worked.
Yeah, no, it worked. And Mike is not as unaware as people would lead you to believe. I mean, he, for instance, I said, I want you to say, I'm not like other guys, and it's going to get a big laugh. And he said, it will, won't it? And I said, yeah. He said, okay. So, he's not a dumb guy, and he's certainly eccentric, but I like him.
Yeah. So how's he doing? Is he all right?
He says he's fine. I don't know.
Okay.
He's in Bahrain with his kids.
Oh,
I haven't a clue.
Let's talk about Blues Brothers. We're going a little non-linearly, but I figured you could handle that.
You can tell that's the way I think.
How did that come about?
Well, the Blues Brothers, that's another interesting thing that was created before my involvement, which was Dan Ackroyd always had a great love of rhythm and blues and essentially Black American music. And he was deep into it as a young guy and has an encyclopedic knowledge of rhythm and blues. And Danny always had clubs in mostly illegal clubs, but in Toronto and around Ontario and in Chicago and in New York City. He always had clubs. His House of Blues is a direct result of Danny being, what's the word? Speakeasies, I guess. So Dan, who I met on Animal House, we discussed the Blues Brothers then. In fact, we made a development deal with Universal that's why Lorne Michaels and NBC have no part of the Blues Brothers. It's still written that it was created on Saturday Night Live, which is totally not true. Danny and John had created the Blues Brothers with Judy, John's wife, Belushi, Judy Jacklin, before they were on Saturday Night Live. Danny met John through Second City. I think John went to Toronto. I think John first met Danny. He was trying to get people to be on the National Lampoon radio show. In any case, they had a relationship, and John was into headbanging music, heavy metal. And in fact, John Belushi and Michael Jackson had something in common. They both listened to music so loud, it makes your teeth hurt. It's like, anyway, so Danny and I made a deal to make a movie about these characters, Jake and Elwood, and we sort of fleshed out the mythology and stuff, but it was a way of performing for them, for fun, that they used to do, and it came out of, they used to drive cross country. Danny's idea of a good time is driving from, New York to LA in 24 hours, that kind of, and with James Brown blasting. He's still a motorhead, Danny, Anyway, Danny had a real passion for the music, and the music was totally out of fashion at that moment. It's interesting. I mean, one of the things, you look back on things that you've done, and one of the great successes of the Blues Brothers was it really did refocus attention. I mean, now James Brown is James Brown. He was always James Brown, but for a while there, nobody knew it.
Right.
People would say, how did you get those people? And it was like, how did we get those people? We called them. They were delighted. At that time, very white disco, like ABBA, the Bee Gees was the big music. And Danny was, this mission from God was a joke I put in the movie, but I was making fun of Danny because he was evangelical about calling attention to this great American musical form and these great artists, and he was deadly, and still is deadly serious about it. So they used to perform as Jake and Elwood several times. They fronted for Willie Nelson's band, and as Jake and Elwood, and this sort of uniform of the hat, pork pie hat, and a black tie came about, and it was Danny's idea. It really comes from an old photo of John Lee Hooker, but Danny's whole thing, rationale is it's in the 50s, people like Lenny Bruce and these hipsters and mostly junkies are trying to look straight. So they're looking, like businessmen in their suits. As Aretha says, like Hasidic diamond merchants. In any case, so they performed as Jake and Elwood, and then Danny and I start talking about, let's do a movie one day about these guys, and we're talking. So this deal is set up. And again, accidents. What happened was I was preparing a movie called The Incredible Shrinking Woman after Animal House with Lily Tomlin, which I did not make, which was made, but the movie that was made is not the movie that I was going to make. It's very different. In any case, I worked on that for quite a while. Meanwhile, Danny and John had performed as Jake and Elwood at venues around New York in front of house bands and stuff. And then Paul Schaeffer led the Saturday Night Live band then. He's an extraordinary musician, Paul Schaeffer, and really knows his stuff. And he's an essential element of the Blues Brothers, I think doesn't get credit sometimes. Because what happened was they said to Lorne, can we perform on the show as Jake and Elwood? Lorne said, absolutely not. They said, no, we're really good. It was like, get the fuck out of here. So, in fact, the first time they performed was as Killer Bees, and John hated that costume, and although he was cute in it, and that's the first time they performed as Jake and Elwood on the show, backed by the Saturday Night Live band, led by Paul Schaeffer with those horns, Blue Lou Marini and Tom Malone and Al Rubin, Steve Jordan, great musicians, and it was a hit. It was a real hit. And then finally, I think they were the warm-up act for a while, and then I think a show hosted by Carrie Fisher, ironically enough, they performed as Jake and Elwood and blew the house down. And Steve Martin, who was the height of his career as a stand-up, it actually still makes me unhappy Steve's not doing stand-up. I don't know if you ever saw him in person. He's brilliant. He was so fucking funny. And I'm sorry he doesn't do it anymore. But anyway, Steve Martin was going to play the Universal Amphitheater in Los Angeles, which at that time was a beautiful venue. Now it has a roof. But at that time it was an open venue. It was beautiful, like the Greek Theater. And he was going to perform there some shows in the summer. And he said to John and Danny, you guys want to open the show for me as the Blues Brothers? So they immediately made a deal with Atlantic Records to record it. And then they got serious about it. They said, okay, well, we need a band. So Dan Ackroyd, John Belushi, and Paul Schaeffer put together the Blues Brothers Band, which is still one of the great revue bands in the world and still tours all over the world as the original Blues Brothers Band. You have Steve Cropper and Duck Dunn, who are not only, the MGs of Booker T and the MGs, but they are the heart and soul of Stax Records and Otis Redding. And Steve wrote so many classic songs. He's like the Irving Berlin of rhythm and blues, from Nashville. He got these amazing guys from Memphis and Nashville. They had the New York Horns from Saturday Night Live. They got Matt Guitar Murphy from Texas. They just put together an amazing band. Unfortunately, Lorne wouldn't let Paul performed at the amphitheater, but he wouldn't let him out for the movie. So that's why Murphy Dunn plays Paul in the movie. Paul's finally in the sequel, so he did get to be in it eventually. But we shaved his head for the sequel, and this is a couple of years later, he kept it, yeah. So that's, I discovered Kevin Bacon, and I shaved Paul Schaeffer's head. Those are my claim to fame. Anyway, it's an amazing story because what happened was, so now Saturday Night Live is the #1 show on television. Animal House, #1 movie in the country. John is the star of both. Danny's the star of Saturday Night Live. And this album, Briefcase Full of Blues, live album recorded at the amphitheater, becomes a phenomenon. Platinum. So these two guys have the hottest TV show, the hottest movie, and the hottest album. And suddenly Universal looks and goes, hey, we own this. Well, they don't really own it, but they had the right to make a movie. They said, can you be in production by this date and be out by this date? We said, sure. There's no script, So Danny wrote this epic script, and then I rewrote it. And then we worked together. Anyway, that
phone book size.
Yeah, it was huge. It was a wacky I've made 2 movies this way, where you start shooting before you have a screenplay, a finished script, which is it's not the most economic way to make pictures, but they needed it quickly, and we just jumped on the momentum. And I remember they announced the budget. We'd been shooting for months in Chicago, and they announced the budget is $12 million. I remember Bob Weiss said to me, what are they smoking? We've spent $12 million. It's like, what? Anyway, it was another strange project because, to make a movie in 1980 with Cab Calloway, John Lee Hooker, Aretha Franklin, Ray Charles was doing well, but the others were all struggling, and it was great fun. It's a strange movie. I was 28, and I was, you have the arrogance of youth, and part of the joke in that movie, we called it comedy noir because it was all deadpan. It's become a style. It's interesting how that, people talk about Animal House, but I think the Blues Brothers is ripped off even more in terms of, if you look at Men in Black, that deadpan, it's completely the Blues Brothers, and they even dressed like the Blues Brothers. Anyway, it was a great experience and great fun, and I got to do big Max Sennett Keystone kind of crashes and Keystone Cops kind of stuff, and it was a great experience.
And brought back the blues.
Totally, it was a complete success. I mean, it was successful financially. It was hated by the critics in this country, just loathed. But it had a great impact because, for instance, Pauline Kael, who hated the movie, wrote 20 pages about how fabulous Aretha Franklin was. So that's worth it to me. And it was very successful, thank God. And much more so. It was the first American movie to make more money foreign than domestic, which is now normal. But then it was a big deal.
You've got a lot of SNL connections in your movie.
Strangely, I do, but in fact, I'm not involved with SNL in any way other than I have tremendous respect for Lorne Michaels, and I've worked with a lot of talent that had been on the show. I mean, I made Three Amigos, and Three Amigos is written by Lorne Michaels, Randy Newman, and Steve Martin, three very smart guys. Three Amigos was not as successful as you think. I mean, because it's become such a respected film and a cult film and stuff. I don't think people realize in the United States it wasn't as commercially successful as we hoped. I think maybe because it was a little too dry.
Tony Plana's coming in later today.
Tony Plana?
Plana.
He's wonderful. Why is he coming in?
We're interviewing him.
For what? He's about to do a big Hispanic show.
Yeah, well, we're interviewing him about different things in his career. But one of my favorite lines is, do you know what plethora means?
That's Alfonso's line.
Plethora, I feel good. I mean, some of the stuff in that movie is just so wacky, bizarre.
Well, it has a wonderful cast.
It's fantastic.
Wonderful cast, and it looked great. And my wife is, Deborah Nadulman is a costume designer. And she's designed films like Raiders of the Lost Ark, and she worked for Louis Malle and Costa Gavras and stuff, and has designed Animal House, The Blues Brothers, Trading Places, Coming to America, for which she was nominated for an Oscar. Why am I telling you this? Oh, because Three Amigos, I think her work is amazing. She just really, that's got a great look to it. And I really enjoyed making that movie. Walter Hill once said, he's a director, and he once said, if they knew how much fun it was to make a Western, they wouldn't let us. Because I love making that picture. And, Randy Newman, first of all, the music in it, the Elmer Bernstein score is brilliant. It's probably the best score of any of my movies because it's Elmer Bernstein having fun with Elmer Bernstein music. I mean, he's riffing on the Magnificent Seven and just really, really funny score. And the biggest orchestra I ever had, it was like 105 pieces or something. And then the songs, of course, by Randy Newman. Randy Newman is the singing bush.
Now it can be told. Next time, John Landis returns for part 4 with more Three Amigos stories. Sly Stallone in the film Oscar, which was definitely not Oscar-worthy, and the film I know you're waiting to hear more about, The Stupids. See you then. And don't forget to subscribe.